In part 2 of this session, we'll take the position, and positioning has to do with where you want to put your item. So again, target, position, that's the name of the property, and the value. There are 5 values that we can choose from. Static is the default, so you don't even have to put it, that's automatic. We have relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. So let's take each of them. Let's say, for example, we have a window. Most likely our web pages are larger or longer than your window, than your browser, your screen. So even if the web page is really long, you only have a visible area of what you see of the page, right? And sometimes as you scroll up and down, that visible page will show what the rest of the page looks like. But by using the position property, we can tell some items to stick or to stay in their positions. And let's see how we do that. So the static is the default setting, and it moves in place as the page scrolls up or down. This is the way we write it, position static. So this div, if we're going to move the page upward, the div scrolls upward with it. Okay, that's our default. We have the fixed, and it stays exactly in place, and it moves in place as the page scrolls up and down. Okay, so this is the way we're going to denote it. We write it position fixed, and you have to tell it where it's going to be fixed. Top 100 and left 30. Now, when we are using the fixed position, it's always going to get the value starting from the upper left of your browser here. Okay, if this is the window of your browser, it's always going to get it from here. So top 100 from here, and 30 from the left. Okay, 130, and that's the fixed. So when we move up, even if the page moves up, this div, this stays in place, and it's always going to be 130 from the side. Let's go now to the sticky. So in the sticky position value, the sticky will start somewhere, but it's going to change to a fixed position when the parameters are met. So this is the way we write it, position sticky, and where will it stick? So we want to stick it to the top at 0 pixels. We can change this anytime. So if this is your sticky, as it goes upward, it will stick to the top. That's the way we positioned it. Okay, so as it scrolls up, this one will scroll up, but when it goes to the top, it sticks. We'll show you an example later. Now, the relative is really interesting because it will determine the position of an item where it should have been relative to where it should have been. So, assuming that this is a web page and this is your div, if the div is supposed to appear here, that's the natural place it's supposed to appear, we can tell it to appear in a different place, but with this as its original position. So if I said position relative, top 100 pixels, left 75, this is the way it's going to be. This div that's supposed to appear here will appear here, but it's going to have a top of its top from its original position and 75 pixels from its original position. There. So from here is 175. That's what we use the relative for. We have also the fourth one, which is the absolute. Now, absolute will change in its way it is rendered depending on its container. Okay, if the absolute does not have, let's say this is the absolute div that is positioned absolutely, does not have a container as a reference, it's always going to get its reference from the top left of the browser. So in effect, it's just like the fixed, no? So this is the way we write it: div position absolute top 100 left 75. Okay, now if my div lives inside a container that is not that does not have a position that is static. So if it is fixed or relative or absolute also, then it will work. Okay, so as long as it is not static, it will work. So let's assume that we have this div. This is a div. Okay, the gold div. It is positioned relatively top 175. Okay, so it's supposed to appear here, but because it's relative, it appears here. 100 top and left 75. And we have a section inside it. This one. Okay, section. And it's positioned absolutely with its parent. Okay, that's see, the section is a child of the div. Okay, so it will take now, because the div has a relative position, the section, this one, which is absolutely positioned, will use the top left of its parent. So here it's counting not anymore from here. It's not anymore positioning it from here, but from its parent, which is 60 from the top and 300 from the left. Okay? So again, if you want to have a position of something, of an element inside a container, you use the one inside should be absolute, and the container it is inside should be relative, or sticky, or fixed, as long as it's not the static. And let's go to a CodePen demo for this. So we're back in CodePen, and I'd like to show you some examples of the positioning. Let me tour you in what we have with the HTML. So basically, I have a paragraph. We have paragraphs. I just made them pretty long so we can scroll upward and downward. Let me just there, so we can scroll upward and downward. Okay, and then so all of them are just paragraphs. And inside them, in between one of them, I have a div called with an ID named Goldbox, and I have a sample navigation bar, for example. So my Goldbox basically is the CSS is just background color gold, padding of 10, font family is sans serif, and a font size of 13 pixels. So the positioning of this, by default, we said is static. So when we move the scroll bar upward and downward, there, it follows, right? Okay. Now let's go to the fixed. Okay. If I say that I want this to be fixed, sorry, position fixed. There. And I need to tell the position, right? So I want a top of, let's say, 200 pixels. There. And left of maybe 25 pixels. There. Okay? So there. One thing you've noticed is that what happens is that when we use a positioning, the original item gets yanked out of the normal sequence of elements. So it no longer follows the sequence of elements. It's a element on its own. So that's the reason why this next paragraph just went upward. It doesn't follow this anymore. Okay, it just adjusted itself, thinking that this is no longer part of the normal flow. And it isn't part of the normal flow because when we scroll upward and down, we assume that this is going to be fixed. So as I go upward and downward, it's fixed. There. It's always fixed 200 pixels from the top and always 25 pixels from the left. Okay? There. Now, let's change this one now to to sticky. And I want it to stick to the top at 0 pixels. There you go. Okay, so we said that the sticky starts off as static, and then when it reaches the desired position, it will become fixed. So here, it still follows the normal flow because it's a static right now. So when I scroll upward, when I scroll up and down, it follows, right? When I scroll upward, it will go upward until it sticks to the top. There you go. And then when I go downward again, it follows where its original position was. So that's how we do the sticky. It's really nice for navigation bars. Huh? Okay. So the other thing that I'd like to show is your relative. So let's do relative. So here, this is where we expect the element to appear. Okay. If I change this to relative, there, okay, I can tell now, watch this, this is going to be our point of reference there, okay, and I will put a top of, look at this because it's going to change, no? Top 50 pixels, there, okay, so from here, this is where its original, this is where it's supposed to appear. It gets yanked out of its normal flow, and it goes 50. It goes 50 from the top, and I can do that also for the left. Say left, 25 pixels. There, okay. Or I can also make it, if I wanted to do it, from its original, no? Always from its original. There. So again, because it gets yanked out of its original flow, it will act as a static, but the elements around it will not flow around it. It's you have to adjust it manually. Okay. So let's take the absolute. Let me take this out first. So the absolute, we said, if there is no container, it will take the upper left of the item. So if I said top of 0, it's going to use the top of this, right? Or if I wanted also a bottom of 0, there. Or maybe it's too close, maybe 10 pixels from the bottom, there. Okay, maybe we want the right to be 0 pixels, there. It's always from the, what do you call this? From the browser window. In my next example, we will show you how absolute will work inside a container that is not static. Okay, so we're back in CodePen, and so I have again a very simple HTML. I have a mother container called with an ID called goldbox, and I also have a child container, also a div with an ID named redbox. So the way that I styled it is my goldbox has a background color of gold, and the width is 400 pixels, and the height is 500 pixels. My red box has a color background of red, that's this one, and the width and the height are both 150 pixels. Okay, so if you notice, by default, your browsers always have a margin, right, around it by default. So I will say I'll put this all the way on top so it won't bother us. Body will have a margin of 0, okay, so that it goes away there. So at least now we know that this is our browser top left. Okay, so let's see what we'd like to do. Let's move the gold box a little bit. So I maybe have a margin on top, margin. Okay, let's just do it. Margin 100 pixels on the top, and then 0 on the right, 0 on the bottom, and then left, let's use also 100 pixels. There you go. Perfect. Now, what we want to do is we want to play with the red box. If I told the red box to have a position that is absolute, and we will have a top of 50 pixels, 50, and left of 100 pixels. There, left of 100 pixels. Okay, let's make it 200 so we'll see it better. 200. There you go. So because the container, the gold box, the container does not have any positioning, by default the position is static, right? So what's happening is the red box is getting its position, the absolute position, from the top left of the browser, which is top 50 and left 200. Okay, so the way that if we want to make our red box position itself relative to this yellow container, relative to its parent, the parent has to have a position that is not static. So in this, what I'd like to do is I'll change it to relative. Relative. There you go. There. So what's happening now is the red box is using its position of absolute from the top of the yellow box, which is its container, the gold box. No, so top of 50 and left of 200 pixels. Okay. So what's nice about this is we can position this red box. Let's say, for example, we will change the margin of the yellow box, of the gold box. Let's say this goes to 300 pixels on the top. There, see? So the red box will always follow the yellow box because it is positioned relative to its container. Okay, so let's make this 50 there, so it follows. Let's bring it back to 100. So the red box, what's nice about the red box, the position, is we can also use negative. We can use negative. What do you call this? Values, no? So a top of negative 50 will look like, oops, negative 50 will look like that. So it's negative here. From here, instead of going downward, negative 50 goes upward. Okay, and we also can go negative left. Let's say, for example, negative left of 25 pixels. Okay, there, pixels, there. So it's negative 25 of this yellow box, and then negative 50 of the box. Okay, so how do we use the positioning, absolute positioning, in a very practical way? So let's say, for example, let's change my yellow box. Let's make the height. Let's make the height of my yellow box. Let's see. Let's use 100 pixels. 100, and I want this to be 100%. So every time we use percent, it's always the percentage of its container. Okay, so no margins. Let's just put a margin on top and no margin on the left. There. Okay, width, height, margin. So let's change this to margin top. There. Okay, just a margin. Okay, there we have this one. So let's make this red box a circle. So it's 150. So I want a border radius. Okay, let's put it here. Border radius of 50%. So it becomes a perfect circle. There. And then I want to position it absolutely. This time I will position it from the top 50%. There. So what's happening now? Let's take away this first. This left. Okay. What's happening now is if this is 100 pixels, it will position it 50%. Okay. Now I want to center it, so I will move the red box backward. So margin top by half of it, and half of 150 pixels is 75 pixels. And there, I'm sure negative. Let's go upward. There. So now I'm sure that this is exactly in the center without guessing, no? Let's see. I want maybe a margin left of let's say what, 100 pixels. There. And then maybe I'll put, well, let's put something now. P, maybe we'll use McDonald's. Okay. Does that sound correct? Yeah. Okay. So let's style the P inside the red box. Red box P. Okay. P will be text align center. Align center. Good. And then let's change the color to white. Oops. There you go. And then let's make the font bold. Font size, let's change it to 18 point. And then the font weight to bold. Okay. And then let's move it to the bottom. So just change the margin. You can do positioning if you wanted to, but I want to use margin. Okay, let's margin top probably 60 pixels. There we go. So we can use what do you call this, the absolute and relative positioning when you want to put something on top of something else and it's relative to the something else. So let's say, for example, I want to move that margin, my yellow box. I want maybe the boss or the client says, put more space on the top or lessen the space on top. So let's get, okay, boss, we'll just lessen the space. Okay, so the red box will just follow. Okay, so that's how we will use the absolute and the relative positioning quite practically.